So what Khrushchev did in this political sphere was to lay down the foundation for restoration of capitalism. But that's the political side. Socialism cannot be dismantled by just introducing erroneous ideological and political propositions. This is only a prelude to it. This is a means to something. It prepares the ideological ground, it softens the ideological field and the political opposition, if you like. The real idea was to step by step restore capitalism in economic affairs. Now, one of the things that Khrushchevites wanted to do was for bourgeois economic theories to be accepted as the norm. It had been the constant complaint of bourgeois economists, their refrain against the socialist economy, that it was not possible to have an efficiently functioning modern economy unless there was a market. Because only in the market you could make the rational economic calculations, what the prices should be of the various goods and services. And only capitalism and entrepreneurial activity provided people with the incentive to carry on with production. If there's no profit, what's the incentive? It's the capitalist who either rewards workers by giving them higher wages for higher production, or in some cases withholding all wages, that unless you do this, you will not get any wages. And this is really what's the spur to production. And since managers of socialist industry are not rewarded if they produce more and are not punished if nothing happens, they have no reason to produce. They can sleep in their rooms, everybody would be lazy, the working class would simply go to their dogs. That's the capitalist complaint against socialist economy. It's unworkable. They even go on to transplant the idea that has been bequeathed, the 18th century Enlightenment has given a lot to humanity. But it has also left certain very almost reactionary things for us to deal with. Because the 18th century didn't always have the solution to various problems, the philosophers of that then resorted to the only method that was available to them. They enlisted the help of human nature. Any problem they couldn't solve, they said, well, that's the way it will happen. Well, why? Because that's human nature. So the capitalists say it's human nature to make a profit, to exploit other people. That's what everybody has known ever since then. God himself was an estate agent. That's the way things function, and that's the way they always will function. And this was something against which Stalin had fought might and main. If you look at the last work that he wrote, that Keith referred to in his contribution from the floor earlier, Economic Problems of Socialism in the USSR, it's a gem of a work. And there are comrades who do not like this work, they criticize it, they say it shows Stalin's revisionism, that's what actually took the Soviet Union down the road. And may I say this, all these comrades' venom is concentrated on attacking Stalin. No attack on Khrushchev, very little on Gorbachev, very little on Brezhnev. It's all on Stalin, Stalin's revisionism, which has done that. The Soviet Union was a dictatorship of the proletariat in Lenin's time, in Stalin's time, in Khrushchev's time, in Gorbachev's time. They don't see the process of the dictatorship of the proletariat withering away, if you like, being demolished is a better word, bit by bit, ever since Khrushchev's speech in 1956. But Stalin anyway fought against these erroneous economic ideas in his Economic Problems of Socialism. Some of the Soviet economists have tried to advocate that, for example, that under socialism, the political economy did not study the question of relations of production. It only studied the productive forces, how to rationalize and organize production. Stalin fought against that thesis, he's saying, because it was a veiled attempt to kill Soviet political economy, the political economy of socialism. There's no political economy which can leave out of the equation the two sides of it, namely the relations of production and the productive forces. Because there's a relationship between them. If the relations of production and productive forces are in harmony with each other, it gives a tremendous impetus to the development of production. If there is discordance between them, if relations of production have lagged behind productive forces and they stand in the way, then it obstructs the further development of the productive forces. And that's very important to study. But these economists, they're not fools. When they say, we don't study relations of production, they're not important, we're a socialist society. What they want you to do is to ignore the question of relations, so that it actually leads to a situation whereby the relations of production come into conflict with the productive forces, and if they're not handled properly, back to capitalism again. Stalin, while admitting that at that time the relations of production and the productive forces in the Soviet Union were in harmony, but he said it would be wrong to think that they will carry on forever like that. A time will come, as it always does, whereby the relations of production lag behind productive forces. They've got to be constantly adjusted. For example, one of the examples he gave was that Soviet agriculture was collectivized. In order for relations to be upgraded as the productive forces developed, Soviet agriculture would have to assume the same position as Soviet industry. Namely, it will have to become state property, just like industry was a state property. Because only that would allow the planning agencies to plan much more effectively for the entire economy. Only that would allow the mentality of private ownership to disappear. Only that would allow the Soviet state to take out of commodity circulation a whole lot of commodities. In addition to saying that relations of production didn't matter, some of these Soviet economists were even saying that machine and tractor stations in the Soviet Union on the collective farms should be dismantled, in the sense they shouldn't be owned by the state, they should be handed over to the collective farms. Why? Because they said it was very essential to reach the communist state. Because the collective farms are strong enough, they can afford everything, and let them take charge of that. Stalin opposed it by saying it's not right to hand over machine and tractor stations to the collective farm. What will it do if we were to do that? He said it will give a tremendous boost to commodity circulation. Yeah. Billions and billions of rubles worth of machine and tractor station and their machinery and their buildings would become the property of the collective farms, which are not state property. And we will be throwing this much of property into commodity circulation. Secondly, the collective farms are not strong enough to be able to update this machinery, which needs to be updated every 5 or 6 years to keep Soviet agriculture ahead of time. And if they were to become the property of the collective farms, they won't be able to update this machinery, and Soviet agriculture will be wrecked. And that's precisely what happened, because when Khrushchev came to power, one thing that they did as a matter of urgency was to actually return machine and tractor stations to the collective farms. And from that date, actually, you can literally trace the degeneration of Soviet agriculture. So by the time the Soviet Union collapsed, it was spending something like $30 billion every year importing grain and corn from the capitalist world. Yeah. And there was no need for the Soviet Union to do that before these things were. Not to talk about Ploughing of the Virgin land. Khruschev knew nothing about agriculture, so he had this crazy idea. Punjabi farmers could have told him much better than what he knew, let alone the Soviet one.